James said he would crash through a glass door and hold onto a truck to get out to Achula to get to where I was. That was sort of romantic, I thought. He said he was voted best looking cop unanimously by the entire Tampa Police Department. And they all voted on naming the name for his son, Danny. I think it was Danny. He said I look like Meg Ryan. Isn't that nice? People used to say he looked like Dennis Morgan, Burt Reynolds, and other movie stars. One afternoon, some women in his neighborhood played a joke on him. They woke him up in the middle of the night or the afternoon during his nap so they could see him in his red boxer shorts, and they applauded him. Huh? James spoke in a whispery voice, and I had to lean very close to learn that he was a former City of Tampa police officer and Ford manager. I would have said he was part of the mafia because of his voice. Later, James also spoke of being a distant cousin of Shirley Temple and Robert Taylor. He also shared many stories with me, including one of how he outdrew Lash LaRue, arrested Mickey Mantle, and had a nice conversation with James Arness from Gunsmoke. He said James Arness's hands were twice as big as his. When he was undercover one time using a cane and an overcoat walking down the sidewalk like an old man, his co-workers asked him if he needed help, and then they realized it was him, and they said, "It's only Beckner." He once wore a wig and rode a bicycle built for two all by himself. I became traumatized when my amazingly intelligent son told me that Barack Obama was the stern-faced ruler mentioned in the Bible, and that if he was elected as president, that meant weird things would happen in the United States and the Great Tribulation would begin. I became exhausted from worrying, work, school, and my family, and was diagnosed with severe rheumatoid arthritis. Being threatened with divorce over financial difficulties and all that made me feel even more worse. And I was in shock and felt alone, except for God. I admitted myself to the hospital after I passed out while driving to work and bumping into the car in front of me. I thanked God I didn't hit the crossing guard or any children who were in front of that other car. I called my Aunt Anna and asked for a ride to my doctor for help. Not long before that, I had felt on top of the world because my son and oldest daughter had been accepted into UF on 100% Bright Future scholarships. However, my son's fears about the economy soon became reality, and I had a nervous breakdown. At the hospital, I received ECT because it had helped my father lead a normal life after suffering from shell shock on his Navy ship during an attack of the Korean War. I entered a residential treatment program where I met Woody Harris, a former foreman and heavy equipment operator who said he helped build Epcot. Later, I learned that according to the Chinese zodiac, he was an irresistible dragon. Upon my arrival, I was still in shock. He looked into my eyes and told me, "You will be okay." After we were released, Woody brought me to visit and play cards with my mom. I noticed James was still there. Woody and I lived together until he got back on drugs and pulled me into an intersection while we were out walking on April Fool's Day early in the morning when it was still dark. My lower legs and several ribs were broken and my legs, wait a minute. Ribs were broken and heart and lungs bruised. We were hit by an SUV. I was the lucky one, though, and lived. Woody didn't make it. It was no fun being in the hospital alone. Somehow I still remembered James and had courage. He inspired that in me. My mother called and spoke with me on Good Friday, the morning after the accident, and sounded normal, but she died later that same day. After a few days in the Lakeland Regional Hospital, I was brought to the same rehab my mother and James had been in. I was shocked that James was still there and asked a nurse about him. She said he had been there for 15 years. I asked if they ever tried to get him any dentures, and she said she would look into it. I heard some nurses discussing the fact that he really wanted out of there. I told one nurse that he was very handsome, and she replied, "You should have seen him when he was younger." When I asked James if he believed in God, he replied, "Yes, because of all the amazing things in his life." And I was very happy to hear that. It gave me hope. James asked me in a lovely note if I would be his girl. Somebody else wrote the note, one of the nurses. I had been hoping he would ask me that. God heard my prayer. He brought a white carnation in a vase to me on Mother's Day, and Indian arm wrestled with my son, Daryl. But the administrator and nurses tried to stop us from being together and even from holding hands during a church gathering. I told James my situation of losing my mother and my father and my brother and needing to sell the house because of all the memories, hard memories, and he said he could help me. He said he realized I was all alone. I told him I really liked the song, "Someone to Watch Over Me." He said it could be our song.